Hi, I'm Stephanie from Ducky, and today we'll be talking with Sean from Astara Coaching about therapy and how to find a good therapist for you,
What a topic. Where do we want to start?
honestly. Well, I think one of the first things that has people looking for therapy is a big kind of event. I don't want to call it a crisis because sometimes it's actually a really positive change, but some sort of upheaval or change of the status quo. And if that's the case, obviously there are therapists that are have specialties in those things. So if you've gone through a physical, car accident, or if you've gone through a divorce or the loss of a loved one, there are therapists that are kind of keyed into those points. Um, but I know you kind of deal with a broader range of emotions and kind of what people are going through. So I'd love your take on it.
Yeah, so within any sort of mental health help, my experience and also just what I've learned is that the specialty isn't as important as people give it credit for. And the reason for that, from a, a more sort of science backed perspective that I understand, is because of something called common factors research, which is that when all of these different modalities of therapy were coming out, scientists naturally got curious about which one was the most effective. And what they found was, strangely, they were all about equally as effective. And instead, what they found was that even outside of therapy, there are many things that can be very therapeutic, and they have to do with these certain underlying factors that are present within that sort of work. And when those are present, healing tends to occur. And so a lot of times as a coach, I will help clients to find therapists because coaching and therapy can be supplemental. A lot of times I will, instead of trying to focus on the specialty, which oftentimes stops people up because they're like, I don't know what's right for me. I don't know. I can't find somebody who's specialized in this particular thing. I will focus more on the sort of common factors that seem to result in good matches. And it seems to work pretty well with the people that I work with. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I agree that fit is more kind of about the relationship than about the subject matter. Um, and being in the kind of pseudo therapy space, because I'm not a clinical therapist, and I want always to make that distinction very clear. I don't, run diagnoses. I don't do therapy the way therapy is done. But somatic practices are therapeutic, kind of to your point earlier. There are factors there that allow for and accommodate healing. Um, so it's really up to the individual to decide the kind of support they need. And it can be challenging to do that when you feel that you don't really know what kind of support you need. So I completely agree that coaches and therapists can be like a wonder team to really help not only level up with the self awareness, but then know what to do with that deeper understanding and the deeper sensitivity that comes with being more well versed and more fluent in what you need, what your body needs.
Yeah, and I think what you said about the importance of the relationship is definitely something that I experience both in my own coaching work and also in helping people find a good match with a therapist, is that the relationship is such a huge percentage of it that if you can just nail that, you're pretty good along the way. I'm curious for you, what do you think are some of the so it sounds like we've already established that one of the issues that people run into is just, what specialty do I look for, or what things do I look for? What other things do you think make finding a therapist really hard?
Surface, there's a problem with accessibility. A lot of people, I think, really want to find a therapist or initiate therapy, but just the actual logistics of coverage and care, whether or not their plans cover it, if they have insurance, if they're going to do it through like a work employee benefit program. And then once you figure that out and you're like, oh, okay, I do have some support logistically, then sometimes the relationship that you need isn't available within that, within what's covered. And so I think there are a lot of things that get in the way of people even finding that therapist, of even landing in that good fit relationship. And most of the clients that come to me that say therapy doesn't work for me can honestly say, I've never been able to find a therapist that I had that right fit relationship with. And I tried X number of times and then I just gave up.
Yeah. It is a dating process, and that
Mhm.
can be absolutely miserable, especially because of what you talked about of the problem with accessibility, that there are already so many hoops that you have to jump through just to get one date. And so then to have to do that repeatedly over and over again when you're
When you're
already,
already under duress,
yep, exactly, is
there's already
just,
something that feels overwhelming. And then on top of that, and because of that, you need to now, yeah, go on basically clinical dates, which sounds fun for everybody. I don't know about you, but
I've always wanted to go on a clinical date.
a clinical date where you show up and pour your soul out and tell somebody everything that you think might be wrong with you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
miserable. It's
And then the
miserable.
worst part is when you do that and you put yourself in a level of vulnerability and discomfort, um, and then the person might not be that right fit that we're talking about, and they might not be equipped to support you in the way that you need to hold you and see you and validate you for whatever it is that you're going through in that moment.
Yeah. That's why I think that hand holding without the negative connotation can be such a boon, to have somebody that just sits there with you, whether it's a coach or a friend, family, whatever, someone who just sits there with you and helps you look up listings, helps you make phone calls, send emails, whatever, is
Yeah.
such a huge help.
Yeah. Because you're being witnessed trying. And that in and of itself is already validating.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people try really hard to not show the trying because it's uncomfortable and it's vulnerable. So they'll tell you, I found a great therapist, but they won't tell you it's the fourth person that I went on a date with. And I had a really hard time getting to this point,
Yeah.
and
It's
I
really,
could have used support.
yeah, it is really interesting, the dichotomy there of, on the one hand, people talk all the time about how much things like body doubling help them. And at the same time, there is this sort of stigma, shame, etc. around trying and being seen trying instead of being seen as effortless and cool and everything is perfect.
Yeah, to touch on something that we talked about in the other episode, re-indigenization. I keep coming back to that because it's such an important kind of value system for me. Things were always done in community for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Nobody picked berries and hunted and put food away and sewed clothes. Like all of our basic needs were met in community. And only recently, in the very last little slice of human history, have we not only been expected to do it completely ourselves, but the value system um, societally is if you can't do everything by yourself, but like it's very dismissive. And then it creates this whole dynamic of having to ask for help.
Yeah.
So coming out of this individual place of strength and diminishing yourself somehow in order to ask for assistance. Whereas before, in community, everyone was constantly asking for and giving assistance, and you weren't helping anybody, you were part of the community.
Right. And so the takeaway being, when it comes to the issues with accessibility, engage in community. Find community to help
Absolutely.
support, lift you up, and get you in there.
Yeah, we made the parallel to dating, but I think it's also like a job search.
Mm-hmm.
You tell everybody what you do and what you're interested in and the kind of position you're looking for, because you don't know if it's your mechanic's niece who has the hookup.
Right.
Right? You don't go and get an oil change when you're looking for a job and not mention that you're looking for a job because you don't need a job working with cars. That's not your specialty. You still mention it because you never know who in the community has that link. And I
Right.
think we've lost that a little bit. Again, with the trying, people don't want to always bring it up because they feel somehow that it diminishes them or they look desperate. When really all it is a bid for connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There's things that come to mind for me about that I think veer off of what we want to talk about today, but it's an interesting topic that I'd like to come back to at some point. The other thing that you said that I was curious to hear more about was, you said the relationship that you need isn't available with what's covered. What does that mean?
I mean, I'm speaking from experience here. I went into a therapy date, right? Like we were talking about, through a work employee benefits program. And I don't know if it was a factor of that created this, or if it was just that individual's kind of uh, therapeutic process. But I went in and did the whole, these are all the things that I believe may be wrong with me. I was witnessed. I was partially validated. And then I was told, but you're so self-aware, as if that was the solution to all of my problems. Having been recently divorced, I was really, really trying to work on relational stuff, and you can only do that with another person. So I was trying to find a good container to kind of play out some of these relational issues that kept coming up for me time and time and again. So I knew there were patterns. Um, but she seemed so excited that I knew they were patterns and I knew which patterns weren't supporting me, that she was like, "You're doing great."
Yeah, it's fascinating that it is an experience that I hear about so often, where people will have a connection with someone that they're working with, and then all of a sudden, the person that they're working with is like, "You sound good. Goodbye." And they're like, "Oh no, I have a lot more problems." And they're like, "Nope, you're done." And I think my understanding of that, let me know what you think, is that the it is focused on function. And so if you are functional, a lot of people will just say, "What are you here for? Get out." I have a line of people out the door that can't even function. And so they walk you out the door. And so there's this gap between, people that have some sort of mental illness and cannot function in society and need that immediate medical attention. And then on the other side, the people that are, relatively happy with their lives. And then in the middle, there's this huge gap of people that are pretty miserable, but they're getting by. And they just get walked out the door a lot of the time.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Um, and, if you have a system of mental health that is fundamentally based on, can we or can we not medicate this person? Can we or can we not issue a prescription? Can we or can we not get this covered by insurance? Once we identify a medical need that requires, chemical intervention, then yeah, those people in the middle who are really good at masking, are really, really good at putting on a brave face, have deep seated control issues where they don't feel safe with themselves, but they would never show anybody else. Those people get a pat on the back and get told they're doing a good job. And, ostensibly that's what happened to me. I ended up making book recommendations to my therapist about the kind of patterns and issues with boundaries that I was seeing in myself. And she goes, "Oh, great! I've never heard of that one. I'm sure it'll be really helpful to my other patients." So there's a lot to be said for being witnessed, uh, but that only goes so far. Being able to really be held and given some kind of structure and support beyond self-awareness is really, I think, where people like you and I come in. And there are great therapists that can do this. They are not the majority. So I don't want that to be misrepresented.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the modality of therapy is based in this functional component. And there are, like you said, there are definitely therapists that go above and beyond. But the norm, and I think that what people should expect, because I think that right now a lot of people do think about therapy as the sort of catch all for any sort of mental health work.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that the way that I phrase it a lot of the time is that there's negative 100 to 0, which is the functional component. And then there's 0 to 100 that a lot of times just doesn't get looked at or addressed at all. And so people come to the conclusion, oh, this is just the way that life is supposed to be. And
if you're at a 5 and you go to therapy,
they're going to say, you sound fine. What's the
you're great.
problem?
Yeah, maybe get another workout in to like support that motivation. Get a planner.
I wanted to mention this. I loved what you said last episode. I didn't get to mention it last episode. I loved what you said last episode about the extractive relationship that we have with our systems. I think it's so poignant and beautifully put that in this sort of functional modality, it is all about, hey, get another workout in. Hey, take this supplement. Hey, take this medication. And that is exacerbated by the fact that things like insurance companies require a diagnosis in order to have treatment done.
Absolutely.
And so,
yeah, it's a system that works for itself. And some people get to benefit from the system working the way it's supposed to work and it was designed to work. But a lot of people get left behind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said before, if there are people that are functioning, then the system's fine with it.
Yeah. And to be very explicit, I hope that it doesn't come across this way, but just in case, I just want to be explicit that I think that the majority of therapists, psychiatrists, etc., are great people and are really genuinely trying to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we are talking about is not in any way to try to bash them or make therapy seem like it's a bad thing. It is only if therapy has worked great for you, by all means. And like if you do feel that you have some sort of functional issue that needs addressing, by all means, seek out therapy. I think that all that we're talking about is if you have really struggled with therapy or have not had your needs met through therapy, some reasons why that may be, and some approaches that you can take to address that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it felt, at least to me, very hopeless after I went through the process of finding a therapist, sat down and bared my soul and did everything, and then was kind of given that, like, well, you're functional, so You're doing great. The aftermath of that was I felt more isolated than before I sought out therapy. I felt that there was something wrong with me and how I operated, because how could I be so functional and so broken at the same time and feel so alone? And the answer to that was just, you're doing great. Like, keep at it. So we're definitely speaking to those people who really, really, you know, maybe sought what therapy systems are not meant to provide.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we talked about, it can be found in therapy. It's
Mhm.
just, it's a little bit like hunting for a needle in a haystack.
Well, let's put it this way. So my one of my very dear friends is a massage therapist,
Mhm.
and his work is exceptional. And I asked him, how much of this did you learn in massage therapy school? And he said, very little.
Right.
That I needed to jump through those hoops to get my license. But what I do that effectively helps people, that gets them back, you know, I mean, if you want to talk about functional, there are people that, come into his practice who can't lift their arms over their heads. They've been thrown out of car windows and in car accidents. He's working on a very, very functional basis. And even so, the training that he got through his licensing process is not the source of the value that he gives to his clients. So much in the same way, I think there are amazing therapists who go above and beyond, and they learn other techniques and strategies to really be supportive of people beyond what kind of traditional therapy systems are meant to provide.
Yeah. And so then I think where I'd like to, the last thing that I'd like to address is, as we have talked about, okay, maybe if you have had these experiences with therapy, it might be worth looking elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm watching this, where my head goes is, okay, so sure, I mean, I could look at a coach, for instance, but then immediately what comes to my mind is, but so many coaches are so fucking scammy. So
Yeah.
how do
And
I?
I love that your mind goes to coaching, because I think a lot of people's mind goes straight to like psychedelics or, some other
Sure.
kind of, extractive process.
Right.
So I think just going to coaching as the next step is a great is a great leap, and one that I wish more people would take.
Sure.
And yeah, I think there's a little bit of a stigma around coaching, only because we think of coaching sometimes as like a sports coach or a business mentor, or there being some real achievement goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the kind of coaching you provide, and the coaches that are in the mental health space, are more about really building solid foundations, creating habits and structures in your day-to-day life that really support you.
How do
And yeah,
you
that will help you achieve goals, but it's not like so achievement based.
totally? How do you wade through the the ones that are, give me $10 million and I'll
Yeah,
be the messiah for you.
absolutely. I think there's a huge, huge amount of pressure and sales um, funnels, and we've all been sold to
Mm-hmm.
beyond our capacity to even like comprehend at this point. uh I think if you feel like you're being sold to,
Hmm.
that's not the coach for you.
That's a great litmus test. That if it feels like a sales call, run.
Yeah,
It should not.
I think every coaching uh call where like there's a can we work together element to it should just be left to the person's discretion of whether or not they feel this is the right kind of connection for them. And definitely not like, and I'm running this bonus that if you sign up now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. So we have date around, rely on community, or I don't know if rely is the right word. Integrate community.
Yeah, don't be afraid to really kind of put your ask out into your community.
Totally. Yeah. Anything else? Any other big tips, tricks that you want to throw out there before we wrap up?
Mm, just be considerate of your level of energy going into these, searches. It takes a lot to be perceived and judged and weighed and measured. And sometimes when you're in a really vulnerable place, it can seem a huge task to go on another therapy date or ask somebody else if they know of somebody that would be a good, fit for you. Um, and just really be conscious and aware of how much you're putting into that so that it just doesn't become another thing that that drains you and that you then kind of maybe avoid.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of that, I think the last thing that I would add is just that it is a relationship. And so
Mm-hmm.
I constantly encourage my clients to evaluate me just as much as I'm evaluating them, especially when you're first starting out. If all of the pressure is on you and all you're thinking about is, oh no, am I answering the questions correctly, et cetera, there's so much that gets missed in what they are doing or practicing. And those things those are, especially when you're starting out, those are the most important things to pay attention to, of how do I feel about my relationship with this person? Does this person feel good and safe to me? And if the answer is no,
Yeah.
find someone else.
Yeah. How does being around this person register
Yeah.
in my system?
Yep. 100%.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right.
Great. Well, hopefully that gave a little bit more insight onto how to navigate the differences and similarities between support you would get with a therapist versus a coach or some other kind of mental health practitioner.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.